Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining the Behind Company Lines podcast. Today we have Michael Hamilton, founder and CEO at Peeva, a pet recovery service. Michael, I'm so excited to chat with you and dive into not only your entrepreneurial journey, but also what Peeva is doing and really in an interesting space that I think is undervalued, as we all have, most majority, I'm sure, have pets in some degree, shape, or form, and recovering them and keeping them maintained, I think it's something that a lot of people don't consider until it's too late. So I'm excited to hear about how you're proactively helping people not only keep track of their animals, but also keep track of their health and their health records. And just to jump on into it, how many, on average, I don't know if you have any statistics, how many people lose their pets and recover their pets in a given time?
Okay, so that's actually a really good question because we did a very thorough analysis on this after I identified the problem and I was going to really put a lot of money into it. I wanted to really know the extent of the problem. So if you're searching, there are a lot of competing references out there.
Yeah.
Initially, I felt that the stats were ridiculously exaggerated, while other times I thought they were underreported.
Yeah.
So we actually conducted what I feel is arguably the most comprehensive analysis of the topic of the sort. Okay.
Yeah.
The earlier references that we were going by just seemed really out of date. And those were sources for reliable, like the American Humane, for example.
Yeah.
Where there are other sources such as the ASPCA that grossly underreport their numbers. So what we found is the earlier stats hold true. So if you have a dog or a cat, the likelihood of winding up lost at some point in its lifetime is 1 in 3. And if that happens, the odds are about 88% against you that you're never going to see your pet ever again. So it's a huge problem. It's a major problem.
Yeah. And I don't know, I can't get into a pet's mind, obviously, but what do you think kind of I guess impacts the ability for whether a pet to find their way back home or an individual to find their pet out in the real world? Is it just knowing the information? Is it how much kind of stimulus is out in the world? What are some of the common challenges that people face when losing their pet and trying to recover them?
Well, pets are very loyal, dogs especially, right? What happens is they simply wander out of the yard or out of the house and they simply are scooped up before they can find their way back. Now they're either scooped up by like an animal control unit or somebody driving down the street, and that makes a psychological or emotional justification that that pet was obviously abandoned or ran away. Pets don't run away. We find that the largest incidences of pet theft are actually like 70-year-old ladies who are doing just that, just driving down the street. It's not like somebody in a trench coat with a giant net in your backyard and stealing your dog, but it's a huge problem. And the reason they're not recovered is the lack of standardization issue among multiple microchips. And that's what we're resolving. That's why we've been able to scale at the rate that we have.
Yeah. And tell us a little bit about the journey. Obviously, looking through your background experience, being a part of the pet kind of industry, I don't know how do you categorize it, but it wasn't kind of your initial focus leading into it. What was not only your journey, but also what was the inspiration behind starting a company like Peeva, coming from the background that you have?
Okay, so when I was a little kid, my dog was stolen and we never got him back. Okay. Yeah. So then when I got Peeva, my dog and company namesake, I registered her microchip right away.
Yeah.
And then I was sad to learn one day while taking her to emergency care at a vet about 30 miles outside of Buffalo, away from her primary vet, that they did not scan her for a microchip. And when I asked why, I was told that I just don't look like somebody that would steal a dog, like somebody who lives in the city. Well, I do live in the city and I just really didn't accept that answer. So I looked more into the problem. And I learned that there is no standardization. So you have multiple microchip companies, multiple distributors, multiple microchips, multiple frequencies in which they operate. So in short, not all scanners can read all microchips. So that's the problem that we're resolving. We distribute ISO microchips that can be read by any brand of scanner. And we've also developed scanners that can read any brand of microchips. But that's only one piece of the puzzle. The greater issue is the data problem. The field of veterinary care is extremely fragmented. Okay. There's multiple shelter management software applications. There are multiple EMRs and practice information management systems. So the likelihood of finding a pet is extremely low. And if a vet, for example, scans a pet and they can read the ID, now they have to visit multiple registries until a match is found. And that registry needs to be called. Calls are placed on hold for long periods. So what we're doing is we're streamlining that whole process with the universal microchip identification system, central pet recovery database, where we literally pair millions of microchip identification numbers with their own medical records and display it in a system that's easy to use. So what that means is any pet care professional in our network can scan any pet that's enrolled with our service to pull up that pet's complete medical history, which provides better care. Yeah. And the rightful pet owner is instantly notified at the exact second that happens.
Goes into building technology that can kind of register or communicate with other registries and pieces of hardware. Is it a limitation of that technology that you had to recreate or kind of create and create new in its entirety, or is it an adoption of a kind of an incumbent technology that was underutilized?
So by analogy, why reinvent the wheel, right? Mm-hmm. So what Peeva's doing is more like fixing a flat tire, right? We're taking what could work and making it actually work. So yeah, scanners that can read any brand of microchip, right? So we had to obviously spend a lot of time. Yeah. I don't want to say reverse engineering, but literally cracking the code to read decrypted chips. Yeah. And then on the data side, the fragmented problem with all these different applications, what we're doing is we're essentially providing data conversion services, right? So we pull in a record into our system and then universally display it by the data field. So just basically why reinvent the wheel? Just make it work.
Yeah. What in particular, one thing I'm curious about as I have pets myself is the keeping track of the records is interesting for me because it's so hard to keep track, just like with papers and paperwork. And if you want to move and or take your animal to another vet, that's a whole nother process. What else outside of just keeping records is kind of under whether it's considered in the pet care process? Do they not know enough about their pets? Is there systems out there where vets cannot necessarily address the issues? Like, it seems the fragmentation is a huge issue. And how is your platform kind of solving that? I know you said it integrates a lot of different systems and communicates a registry, but also in particular, like what else is the advantage of working or being a part of the Peeva network?
Okay. So like I said before, the field of veterinary care, it's just extremely fragmented. Okay. With all these different applications, the pet care industry overall actually lags behind other industries technologically. Yeah. So another issue is just the way pet healthcare is versus human healthcare, right? Like a veterinary professional or a vet clinic owns the patient when they own the patient record. So this makes things extremely difficult for another vet office that just wants to obtain these records. Sometimes they're just simply not forthcoming. Yeah. So there has to be a benefit to kind of streamline that information. Yeah. That's what we do.
Yeah. Yeah. And in particular, how do you think about the business model? You have I don't know if it's a two-sided marketplace, but you have a product overall and a service that has a few different stakeholders. One is a veterinary professional who can kind of register or look at a registry of information. And then you have people who have pets and want more insight into the information, not only where their pet is, but also the previous history behind them. How do you go about selling a product like that and addressing the market that, you're going after?
Okay. Well, first off, we're resolving a problem, and that is pet owners want their pets back if they're ever lost. That's the primary problem. Yeah. But to make that happen, there needs to be, we need to incentivize pet care professionals to actually scan for microchips. There needs to be a benefit. Like I just outlined all the problems with it and why it's led to essentially a lack of scanning for microchips altogether. Now, businesses of all sizes, they either want to make money or spend money or save money, which essentially means the same thing at the end of the year. Savings can be put, the bottom line is revenue. So by making the transfer of this vital information quick and easy, we save vet practices a lot of money. They can eliminate internal redundancies. They can eliminate unnecessary staff required to handle things like faxing and sifting through manila folders. So that's the path to implementation, right? So this all, of course, means absolutely nothing unless you have critical mass of data. So I think that's the $1 million question that everybody wants to know about Peeva. How did we scale so quickly?
Yeah.
And I will say humbly, it hasn't been as quick as I would like it to be. I mean, we've been at this for about 6.5 years. A lot of that time was spent developing.
Yeah.
But critical mass, how do you achieve that, right? So we took a top-down business approach, right? So we initially worked with a very large corporation of freestanding hospitals. So getting approval from the top down, from the C-level, we were able to just kind of roll out within many, many different hospitals. And with every hospital that we onboard, we're pulling in all their patient records, right? So any brand of microchip can be enrolled with Peeva. It truly is a central registry because we auto-enroll literally with every hospital, thousands of pets that are already chipped with other brands. And we offset that obviously by incorporating scanning into their daily operating procedure. Every hospital that we work with, part of our stipulations is they have to scan every pet that comes in their office. And if the pet does not have a microchip, vet techs basically read along a line list of bullet points and the benefits of chipping, ideally with Peeva. They chip them on site, they register them on site. That's how we do that. So that is on the B2B side. The B2C side is word of mouth and digital ads and just registering pets online. With our central registry.
The top-down approach is fascinating to me because it really hinders on the adoption and onboarding from kind of the employees that are most affected by the whether it's a veterinary tech with scanning or someone who's looking up the records. How do you ensure that the adoption of your technology is seamless? Because we all get approval from a higher up to use a certain piece of technology, but that within our workflow, how easy it is to use can kind of make or break the successful or the efficacy of that technology being implemented. What part of the process or how much care and attention do you take into onboarding customers at the individual level to make the service kind of that much more effective?
I would argue with any SaaS business, you really do have to take a top-down approach. It's just simply not cost effective to employ a team of sales professionals to literally travel, walk into vet clinics and the hospitals, hand off a brochure, and then have sales managers to kind of monitor their activity in a CRM and follow up the typical sales funnel. I mean, that whole process is very expensive and very time consuming. It's just a really, really bad model. So taking the high level approach to trickle down and rolling something out hospitals at a time, it basically streamlines that whole entire process. The C-level says this is what we're doing, and then we onboard each hospital. So it is pretty seamless, but it's also the ease of use. Anybody who works outside of tech does not like learning new software. So by design, Peeva is actually simple to use. I mean, by design, even like the look and feel of it, the fonts that we use, the color scheme, it's something that's just very intuitive and simple to use. So it's just kind of a no-brainer. It's already on their desktops. All they're doing is literally, my daughter's 4 years old. She can navigate her way through Peeva. It's that easy.
When you go through the building process, are you taking in user feedback? Are you using it yourself? How much testing are you doing to make sure that it's such a easy to use and seamless product?
So we built Peeva literally almost 4 different times. The first iteration was with the University of Buffalo, right? And then we hired on students that actually worked on this as part of their thesis. And then when the rubber met the road, when it was time to actually be pulling in these large data sets, they were more theoretical. So then we brought in a team of consultants to kind of help them along. Then the team of consultants basically said, hey, Michael, it would probably be better off if you just rebuilt this thing, which I did. And working with software dev shops, that was a bad experience. So then I had to fire them, hire some other consultants to try to make that work. That didn't really work. And then I just finally contacted the group that built what is called Healthy Link New York. I just
Mm-hmm.
said, hey, you did this on the human healthcare side. What's your price? Let's do it. And we did that. And then we started hiring internally and then making the transition from what works in the back end in all our tech stack over to our internal team. So they can basically take it over. But the whole entire time we were working with a handful of clinics and just getting their feedback about everything. I mean, we could truly say built by veterinarians for veterinarians because it's basically getting their feedback and on so many levels, everything from like what the pet owner has access to and unfettered access to the veterinary professional. So you can't really sell anything unless you get feedback from people, right? Can't have any objections. So you just want to make it the best that it can be based on their real life feedback.
Yeah. It's one point you made that really resonated with me because I hear it a lot from founders who start the development process, work with, say, a dev shop or something, and things don't go well. And they have to go through a few iterations to find the right partner or consultancy or build an internal team. Going through that process or thinking about it in hindsight and thinking about advice you would give other founders, what would you advise them to if they're going through a development process, trying to work with different partners? Is there anything that you think would have expedited the ability to build either more quickly or find a team that could attack the problem more quickly and more effectively? You're thinking in retrospect.
Well, if you really want me to be honest with you, I wouldn't advise anybody to ever start a company.
Yeah, that's me. Right.
Unless you really have identified a solution to a problem. And after you really understand the extent of that problem, I mean, once I identified the problem, I was just obsessed with it. I had to find some kind of resolution to it.
Yeah.
I'm not a software engineer. If I could turn back the clock, I would have probably partnered with a co-founder that is a software engineer. Would have probably had so much more control over everything and would have made so many costly mistakes.
No. If someone does choose to start a company and they've kind of identified the problem, going through the development process, if they're not a technical founder, what advice would you give them in finding the right technical resources to then build your product? Thinking about what your experience was working with dev shops, they didn't work out, and then you finally found an original team and a resource. What advice would you give founders who are going through that building process?
If they're not a software engineer and they're trying to design a SaaS business or city you're in, whether you're in Buffalo or say Austin, Texas, there's always going to be like a startup ecosystem, partially because it's kind of trendy. That's not why I started this. There are also different startup grind events. You can kind of get out there and network that way and meet different people. You also have to have a good personality. Personality that can adapt with all different kinds of people. You have to get along.
Yeah.
You also have to have a very open mind. We are very open-minded at Peeva. Like as cheesy as it sounds, I like to say nobody works for me.
Yeah.
They work with me.
Yeah.
Everybody listens first and makes suggestions. Everybody's open to suggestions before deciding the best course of action, which is the best way to, it's not like because I said so or this or the other thing and also to not, when I first started Peeva, so many like angel investors, people like that were like, this is never going to work out because you're essentially three separate companies. Are you a hardware company? Are you a microchip company? Are you an EMR? You know, you have three different business lines. This is just going to fail. Now they're all basically sucking at my kneecaps, but that's a different story. But you know, there really has to be on a need, and it just has to be easy. I mean, if there isn't a need, then it's just not going to work, right?
Yeah.
Now, as far as building products goes, it's always good to have like a minimal viable product. Now, if it's too minimal, obviously it's going to be it's disastrous, right? It's going to be an inferior product. But if you just continually wait to kind of roll out something in line with your grand vision, that's what we call over-analysis paralysis. And things just don't get built. So it's basically get it out fast to as many users as possible, establish that critical mass. That's how you have value. And that's how you essentially make money. And I will say, I didn't start this company to get rich or anything like that. I did solve it to started to resolve a huge problem.
Mhm.
But, that's where money comes in, right? You have to charge a fee. So
Yeah.
that's a benefit.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit more about Peeva and the traction that you have so far. How many clinics or how many veterinary offices use it and register with Peeva? And also, how many animals now do you have under kind of the umbrella of Peeva, not only tracking them, but also having the records and having the ability to find your pet if they get lost?
So we're in close to 300 veterinary clinics right now throughout the US and Canada. With, like I said before, with every hospital that we onboard, we pull in that critical mass of data, pets that are either already chipped with another brand or not, right? And then we also have the signups coming in online. So we do have millions of customers. Unfortunately, the far majority of them are not paying customers, but we do have a couple 100,000 paying customers at this point. So I know that's kind of vague, but right now we have over 200,000 paying customers with our chips implanted in them who have paid to register, as well as people who register their pets with Peeva online as an added layer of protection to their own microchip company. And I hope that answers your question.
Yeah. No, it does. What are some of the biggest challenges that Peeva faces today?
Oh, there's so many. I mean, like internally, like on the biz, just like general operations or competitors. Well,
I guess externally. Yeah.
Okay. General lack of awareness, I guess. I mean, there are so many people that do not know that they have to register their pet's microchip.
Yeah.
There are other people that think a microchip is a GPS device. There are, like I said before, competing sources of information that actually downplay the numbers, so people don't really consider it to be a priority in that problem. And there are also, pardon my language, a shit ton of unnecessary technologies out there that have been developed, marketed, and sold to pet owners over the course of the past 30 years, and nothing has worked. I mean, there are things like, one is ridiculous. It's a QR code that goes on a tag, basically. So anybody can find a pet, they can take out their phone, scan the QR code to be taken to a landing page that'll have a telephone number that somebody can call with that same smartphone. Now, what the purpose of that is, when they can just look at the tag and just call a phone number directly, I don't know. There are a lot of ridiculous things. There are also like free pet microchip registry scams, which are essentially just collecting verified emails. And once that data set grows, it becomes more valuable as most consumer purchases are made online and that's sold off. So people assume that they registered their pet with a legitimate organization, and then their pet gets lost and there's no phone number to call or anything like that. But they do receive lots of emails for everything from BarkBox and Chewy to flea and medication, et cetera, et cetera. So I would say it's lack of understanding of how the technology exists and an underestimation of the actual problem. And that, oh shit, I have to register my micro. We call it the nail and rebate scenario. I mean, the traditional model was somebody would get their pet microchipped and they would literally write down the microchip ID, put it in a brochure and say, go home and register this, but anything could happen. People will get home, they'll either lose the paperwork or they'll sit down to do it. They'll be like, oh, where's my card? And then they should never get around to it. It's like, so we try to streamline that process by registering every pet on site right when it's scanned. So generally, in short, the external challenges are just lack of awareness, fake registries, and just human error. Our end users.
Right. I had a situation actually with a pet where they were microchipped from wherever I adopted them, and I went to go check, and it was like I had to pay for the service to actually know and retrieve the data that I wanted to. So I was like, Man, it's a little bit frustrating because I was a young kid at the time. And so it was a little bit more of a challenging problem. If everything goes well, what's the long-term vision for Peeva?
I just want to keep it going. I mean, I love what I'm doing. There have been opportunities along the way to sell, and I'm just not really interested in doing it.
Yeah.
We've resisted the venture capital game for a while. Something I would like to talk about that I think you might find value in is the similarities between startups and indie rock bands. We can put a mental asterisk and go back to that.
Yeah.
But you don't want to, let's focus on first. So I have this theory. That startups and indie rock bands are very similar, right? I mean, most of them aren't really creating anything new or of any value, and most of them don't make it out of the garage.
Right.
And whereas a band will send out a demo tape to like any label that can essentially make them famous, startups are sending out things like pitch decks to whatever like VC or private equity group that's going to kind of just throw them a bunch of money and then make them essentially famous. Now, we have learned, or at least VCs, I think, have learned, in especially the past year, that 99% or whatever of these deals have been total failure. They're kind of like bad records.
Yeah.
And then you start this band and then you're shelved and you have somebody taking all the equity out of the equation. So it's just a really, really bad business model. So going back to where I see Peeva going and the grand vision, I kind of just like being on top of it. I mean, I started this company essentially with my own money. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I have raised funds because I had to.
Yeah.
It's necessary. And we probably will, again, require a capital infusion to scale at the rate that, in line with my grand vision.
Yeah.
But I mean, I could tell you about what we want to do, but it's kind of premature to do that because features and functions need to be developed and rolled out over time. I mean, I guess, remember iPhone 3, like 10 years, whenever that was. I mean, Steve Jobs definitely knew that there was going to be a camera, perhaps a movie camera, a video camera in future versions, but the iPhone 3 didn't have that yet.
Right.
So I just really want to resolve this problem.
Yeah.
Having a dog stolen from you sucks. Right. So I always think about that being this little kid, just like the anxiety, just like, where's my dog? Just like, why the fuck would somebody steal my dog for? Like your earliest memories are with this dog. There are hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of kids out there just like you who want to know where their dog or their cat is. So not only myself, but everybody who answers calls for us, there's just such satisfaction and just feelings of happiness, like a dopamine hit every day when we return animals to their rightful owners. That's what I like doing.
Yeah.
So,
I think even on the flip side of that, if I see an animal that is obviously someone owns that animal, and I'm a little hesitant as a citizen to go to a shelter or a vet because you don't know how that's going to be resolved, or if you're taking on the responsibility, then they can't resolve it to find where that owner is or where that dog belongs. And you want to be helpful, but it's challenging to have the right resources to connect that dog back with their home. And it's amazing to bring that animal to the shelter. And then there's this whole registry. And now you can resolve that problem so much more quickly.
The best thing you can do, honestly, if you find an animal that's not yours, especially if it's like a dog, it's just, leave it alone. Right. It's going to find its way back home.
Yeah.
Okay. Or the pet owner is going to be looking for it. Now, I understand if it's cold out, you might want to bring it inside. If you're going to get it scanned for a microchip, which you should, you can take it to any vet. They'll scan it for free. Don't ever take it to a shelter because they'll just kill it.
Yeah.
It happens all the time.
Yeah.
That's my best advice. Just
leave it alone.
Leave it. It's not yours.
Yeah.
It's yours.
Yeah.
I mean, what would you do? What would you do? I mean, if you find that, it's not yours. Just leave it alone.
Yeah. I think people underestimate an animal's intelligence to find their way back. And it's just like taking a walk to the store for them. They just want to get out and explore and then return. So it's kind of I agree with that sentiment. Leave them alone. They'll find their way back. I have some rapid fire questions for you that I'm interested to hear answers for. So I'm going to go ahead and shoot. What's particularly hard about your job?
just constantly being on top of what my developers are doing, constantly being distracted every day with just basic questions, which I'm always open to. And it's Murphy's Law. Sometimes every day it's just like the worst thing could possibly happen.
Yeah. But you've been at this for 6 years. What keeps your motivation? Is it something that you do outside of work to help kind of re-energize or decompress? Is it going and going through different cycles of taking a step back and viewing the business high level and going through planning? What in particular keeps you motivated and focused on a project for so much time?
Well, I like to sleep, and every day I have like a check off list of items, right? And if I don't complete everything on that check off list, I basically just can't sleep.
Yeah.
Just laying in bed, just constantly thinking of every like scenario, always with a positive income, because I don't like to attract anything negative in the universe.
Yeah.
You know, that's my motivation, really.
Yeah. Getting enough sleep.
Getting enough sleep and just accomplishing everything. Because if I don't, then I just have to move that over to the next day, and then I have more shit to do.
Yeah.
So I like to have work-life balance. I like having time with my family, not constantly being on the phone. Right.
Yeah.
So time management, I guess.
Yeah. If you were to have more time, obviously time is limited, but if you were to have more time in one particular area, whether it's work, life, family, tasks in particular, what in particular kind of would you, or is that top of your mind to spend more time?
I would like to travel a little more.
Yeah.
But that's more of a personality issue. One issue is my dog. I will not, she will never go to like a dog kennel or like a doggy hotel or something like that.
Some bad stories out of those.
Yeah. So I have friends that will watch my dog, and usually I will just get them like maybe like a gift card to like a hotel for their wife to like maybe have a staycation, go out to dinner or something like that, which is expensive, but it winds up being around the same cost as like a dog hotel or something. Anyway.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of limited as to where I can travel for that reason, because I can't take my dog on planes, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I don't know. I got to find like some kind of somebody to say that it's like a therapy dog. But
Yeah, to get the free pass. Yeah. If you
exactly.
Yeah. If you weren't working on Peeva, what would you be working on?
I would probably just be in New York working at like Bloomberg or something, probably in the financial space or legal space.
Yeah.
Legal tech space. I don't know. I mean, that's what my prior life is in, finance and law. So just be doing that. I mean, I had a really good job before I started Peeva. I had no intention of starting Peeva. I really didn't. I loved my job, but I just kind of got sucked into it. I didn't have time to work for another job. I had to devote all my time into Peeva. So it happened by accident.
Yeah. Is there any one piece of advice or a couple of pieces of advice that you would give to an early founder who's in the beginning stages of building their company? What piece of advice would you give them to either help expedite their process, or maybe as a gem of learning that you learned early on that you would have liked to maybe know earlier on in the company's journey? What in particular kind of comes to, if I was a founder asking you for a piece of advice on what to do?
Really take a hard look under the hood to see if you're resolving a problem, number one. And if you are, the likelihood is somebody has already resolved that problem. For example, a friend of mine, he's a partner at a major AmLaw 20 law firm, right? That's litigation. And he identified a problem one day when he was on an airplane. He just did not like bringing 3-ring binders, these heavy 3-ring binders on planes.
Yeah.
So he's just like, oh, this would be really great if I could just have this all on my iPad. So he spent all this time like having somebody develop this app where you can look at legal documents on the iPad.
Yeah.
At the same time, there are at least a dozen companies out there that exist and do exactly just that.
Yeah.
Rather than kind of survey the landscape and just save a lot of money by using something that already exists, make sure it doesn't already exist. And if it does exist, build something better.
Yeah.
And if it's going to be better, people are going to use it. If it's not going to be better and it's going to be like a Me-Too product, then nobody's going to use it. You're going to waste a lot of money and it's going to be hard to sell.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why the far majority of new businesses in general fail. It's your lack of due diligence on the front end.
Yeah.
That's why that happens.
Yeah.
So that's the most important thing.
Yes.
Identify the problem, see if nobody else is doing it. If they are, make your solution better. And obviously product market fit. What is like, are you going to get a return not only on your investment or your friends and family's investment, but also your time?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Why waste time?
Yeah. Yeah.
There's nothing particularly impressive about starting a company with some kind of mediocre technology and getting, like, say, a Series A to collect like $100,000 sale, or you have nothing to show for it at the end after it fails.
Right. Yeah.
There's nothing to show for it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great point. Whether it was early in your career or now, what books or people have influenced you the most?
Well, Mike Bloomberg is my all-time favorite CEO. He really is. So many reasons.
Mm-hmm.
There's also people like Richard Branson, who I've always been a fan of. And also people that are not household names, just a guy that I know, not even particularly well, but who lives in this area.
Yeah.
He's a restaurateur.
Yeah.
So I think that's cool because I know nothing about that business.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of ballsy to just go out there and just open up restaurants.
Yeah.
And then other than that, the cliche answers like my mom and dad teaching you right from the wrong and all that.
Yeah. I love that. You always got to give a shout out to those who taught you kind of the foundational things in life. And I would like to ask this question before I collect your plugs, which is your LinkedIn and Twitters and where we can kind of get involved. But is there any question that I didn't ask you that I should have, or that you would have liked to answer?
No, not particularly. I mean, I was able to kind of communicate the extent of the problem, our research that went into it, and just the blood, sweat, and tears that goes in with starting something. And then also like advising people to don't.
Yeah. I love that.
It's a lot of frustration. I mean, but I'm glad to do it. It just takes a while. I mean, it's expensive too.
Yeah.
But it's worth it. You're passionate about the problem that you're resolving.
Yeah.
I mean, what's my next startup idea? If I have one, I haven't even really thought about that.
Yeah. I feel like people do underestimate it sounds with all the bells and whistles, cool to run a company or start a company, but the mechanics behind it are really not only personal and professional motivation and kind of this obsession with the problem, but also I think the tough skin to go through the challenges of every day, whether it's tasks or problems or solutions or building team and culture. There's so much that's involved in that whole process that I think is underappreciated about the founder journey, that I think hopefully the podcast gets a good insight into the commitment that founders to solving a problem. And a lot of times the timeline to hit certain milestones, they're a little bit, you want to hit them in maybe a timely fashion, but sometimes there's a lot of adaptation and adjustment that you have to do as a founder throughout that process.
There's the old adage, it's not what, it's who you know. I mean, people really need to understand that's bullshit as well.
Yeah.
I mean, your dad could be David Geffen, but if your band sucks, David Geffen is not going to make you famous, right? I mean, so I like to say it's not what you know or who you know, it's who you could meet and what you could learn from them.
Yeah.
So that goes back to like having an open mind, ask questions.
Yeah.
See the value in anybody who may contact you to see if they can help you out. Maybe they don't know .NET 4 or whatever tech stack is, right? But maybe they can add value in other ways too, right?
Yeah.
So ask questions, have an open mind, definitely survey the landscape, and then I guess just do it. But, it's not like, despite some of in the Buffalo area, like there's this 43 North competition. Their marketing is like going out and starting a company is just so easy. All you got to do is just do it. No, that's fucking bullshit.
Yeah.
That is completely wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, there are all these sources of funding, I guess, for like an SBA backed loan, for example. Okay, well, you still have to have the real estate to offset that. There's no such thing as free money. There's no such thing as just getting out there and doing it. Yes, you have to get out there and do that, but it's not going to be easy.
Yeah.
It isn't.
Agreed. Yeah. I know we're at the end of the episode here, and it was such a pleasure chatting with you and not only learning about Peeva, but kind of how you view product market fit, going through the development process, lining up with the right partners to be able to build, and honestly, the honest truth about if you're considering starting a company, what you should consider and before you even take the next step. So I really appreciate all the insight and all the conversation that we've had. Last little bit is before we end it, what in particular, or excuse me, give us your plugs. How can we get involved? Where can we support? Where can we find Peeva? Where can we find you? Give us, the audience, ways to get in contact and even maybe use the technology ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. You can enroll your pet by just going to our website, which is peeva.co. So that's PEE.co, or just Google Peeva. We'll show up right at the top. It takes about 1 minute to register any brand of microchip. And once you're enrolled, you can add backup contacts. You can locate your pet, upload your pet's picture and everything else. Pretty cool.
I love
and
that.
It ensures the lifetime protection of your pet. We're going to ensure that the microchip is read. We're going to ensure that it's scanned, and you're going to be instantly notified the exact second that it's
incredible. Michael, it's such a pleasure chatting with you. I hope you enjoyed yourself, and thank you again for joining the podcast today.
Yeah, I really like what you guys are doing. Awesome. I'm a new fan.
Awesome. Thanks, Michael.
Okay, buddy.